Welcome to Yobit Solutions. This video is a part of the series regarding managing your finances using Excel. This is the segment number 9. In the previous segment number 8, we completed the design of our transaction summary sheet where we summarized the detail for all the various T accounts used in the file by combining them, their total coming from all the various Excel sheets where journal and the ledger accounts were defined. Then we further extended that total back into debits and credit and set up the details into the trial balance calculations. And in this particular video, we'll go one step further and update the trial balance and then also update the T accounts total into the various T account categories and then into the various sections of our financial statement and the income statements. So to understand the approach better, we completely designed this structure of our application back in video number 4. Our T accounts are linked at the hereditary 1 at the level 1 level up at the hereditary level 2 is where we categorize all those T accounts to various T account categories, and then we go one step further that all those categories are then subgrouped into the various sections inside our financial statement categories. So if you look into the design sheet, we define these linkages based upon various T account category tables, T accounts tables, and then categories go back one level up to our various sections inside our financial statements. So these linkages are well defined in segment number 4. It's highly recommended that if you have not watched that video, please watch the video number 4 first before you watch this segment. Things will make much more sense when we start actually setting up our Excel file. The link to video number 4 and the other videos are in the description below. And also the links for the Excel file as they were developed at the end of those segments are also available to you in the description of those videos as well. So let's continue and jump into Excel. And before going there, however, one humble request: if you like the content that has been served to you, kindly consider subscribing to the channel and like this video. It will help us immensely to get the word out to the similar users like you, and at the same time we'll make sure that you get updated whenever a new segment is uploaded to the channel. So let's jump to the Excel template financial statement balance sheet that I just took the liberty and put some heading. These are the standard headings. There's no formulas in there yet. We'll go together and build it up as we go. First thing first, let's update our trial balance. That was almost finished in our last video, and here we will just complete by adding the debit and the credit entries from both our transaction and the auto accounts payable and accounts receivable sheet. So that from the debit side, if we go to the transaction sheet, that is our debit column, and that would be same goes for the credit. And let's just do the same for our auto accounts and payable and receivable entities is equal to credit side. So these 4 entities are here. Let's just do the sum of these 2 entities. And likewise for this area, sum of these 2 entities. And I just put an if condition here, which was just comparing these 2 entities together as a flag checker to make sure your statement is balanced. Next step here, let's just copy over our T account categories information from our design sheet. It's already established up in here. And all you're going to do is just select the whole column of the table. And on the other entities, we can just do Control C and Control V. And here what we will do is put base information. And third one would be the same, but account name. That would be categories actually, but the name of the column is account. And here we can just do the same thing, but for the debit and the credit. Only the debit entities. Now the next step here is to add up all our category sum total. So in other words, what we're saying is like go into your transaction sheets And maybe let's say, for example, we pick up the first one is the cash and cash equivalent where the ID is 1. We want to go back into our transaction sheet and get the sum up all the totals across all the T accounts where the primary ID is 1. Like for example, these are the two cases here. And the method or Excel formula we use to get this done would be sum ifs condition. So it's saying sum ifs, and if the first parameter in the sum if is which range to sum, and that is our total range, and put a hashtag or the number sign at the end, it will select the whole array. And the second parameter is the criteria range, which range we should look at the criteria, which would be our primary ID. Again, a hashtag at the end. Now, what criteria to be looked at would become our, in this case, with the first row, so PID 1. So by doing so, if you press enter, it sums up all those T accounts where the primary category ID was 1. Now, one modification we have to do here is there are two different areas where where T accounts are listed. It's this area and this area. This is starting at row number 29, another one is starting at row 25. So we want to combine the two because some primary categories exist in both of those two ranges. So the way we would do that would be go back in here and just copy the whole range, copy the whole formula, Control C, plus Control V, and let me just delete the equal sign in here. And instead of 29, if we just put the 25, that will select the other range automatically. So that is the sum, but it's only sum for this particular row, but we want the whole dynamic array to be filled up with the same formula. And for that, we would have to enclose this whole formula in a mapping function. So we would put map, and the mapping range would be our PID range, and then we define the lambda, and the lambda should be P. Let's just name it primary PID as a primary ID. Now and go in the sumif function at two different places where we were using the first row member, we just use the PID dynamically. Same here and same here, PID, and now we gotta close the two brackets, lambda and mapping. So that take care of all our sums. So let us now start working on our balance sheet and the income statement here. What we need to do is fill up all these sections that has already been designed in our previous video. These sections are in our design sheet. The balance sheet side of it have these sections defined, and those sections have a relationship to the categories defined in here, and the categories, that's how we're going to get to the various categories. So to start up with the information, let's go back and set up the account. The first section here is current assets, and they are all in line, and we can just copy and paste these formulas. It's A45, A46, 7, 48, 9, 50. So these are our sections, and now under the section, let's pull up the IDs for the various the categories that falls under these sections, and that would be filter. We are filtering these IDs. So give us these IDs where that is equal to our current asset. We can do F4 here, close the bracket. So now we get all the IDs. Now once we know all the category IDs, now we can pull up the category names in here, and then the total. The names and total we can fetch it from this area that we just developed. So this can be simply X lookup function. we're looking for this value, and we can press F4 for the absolute and then press the hashtag for selecting the whole array. The lookup array would be this one here, F4 again. And give us the corresponding value from our names. So, and if not found, just give us empty. Okay, so now do the exact same thing in here. I'm just going to copy and paste the formula. But instead here, we change the dash sign to 0, and we want to switch the account here. We can just click and drag, or we can retype it. It's not a big deal. So give us the total amount. And all right, so that's done. And then in here, now these are our current assets. Now we also have to add one manual entry here, which is equal to our accounts receivable from the automatic entries. This is the our auto entry. So then we can, what we can do, we can just type in here as we can just hard type it, accounts receivable, and we can just put brackets other, and that would be equal to this amount, and F4 for the absolute. And once this is done, now let's do the total. That would be equal to sum of the first dynamic array, and then the second entry is this. So we're going to sum all of them up. That will be our total assets. So exactly same method we're going to apply in this area, and same as the liability areas and long-term liability and the shareholder equity. So I won't, I'll just copy paste for the sake of saving time, because there's nothing new in here. So let me just paste all the values here. Here we go. I have updated the formulas similar to that pattern. So this side of the sections, this section of the balance sheet is done. Now let's work on the income statement. The key difference between the two sections here is, let's going back in our design side. For the balance sheet side, these sections were actually the parents of our T account categories in the column, in this column. For the income statement, the section headers are actually the T account categories, and the subsections under it are the actual T accounts. So let's just start working on it. This thing is pretty simple. Will make much more sense when we actually start doing it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just type down the ID of our revenue. And then here we can just do an X lookup, that lookup for that ID in our category ID column. And once it's found, gives the corresponding number for the income statement. So this is the revenue. Likewise, here would be expenses. Here would be the ID and the income tax account. Here would be the retaining, the retained income account, and the dividend account, the withdrawals. So let me just update them. Nothing special. Same formulas. Okay, so these values are completed. Now let's move over to the first subsection under the revenue. First, we need to fetch all the T accounts where the category ID is 27, and that can be done by a simple filter statement. We can go back to our design sheet. In our T accounts, we want to filter the ID table, and we give the criteria here that the parent ID is equal to our parent revenue ID in this case. So these are done. Let's do the copy and paste the same formula here. And the only thing we got to make sure that it's this drag, and let's fix the formula here. All right, so that's done. Now here is the same method, but will be X lookup to find the name of the T accounts under it, and that can be done by X lookup. We can put up the ID and make it a dynamic array. look this in what is our lookup array? Lookup array is the same in our design. So we are looking up in ID table, and once it's found, give us our account name. Same method. Let's just do a copy and paste here. We might have to adjust the formula. Oh, that this time it fixed exactly there. Okay, so this is done, and now we need to find out the total of these values, and that is from our transaction sheet, and that we can do by total can be done using X lookup function in our transaction sheet against these account IDs. So we're going to look for this particular ID in our ID column and give us the corresponding total entry. So let me just convert them to absolute references, and that's it. We can put a hashtag in the first parameter that will then update the formula for the rest of the accounts as well. So let's just do a copy and paste in here as well, and that is also being done. All right, so what is the next step? Let's just get the total done, which would be the dynamic sum. Same here. And then comes the income before taxes, would be our revenue minus the expenses. Revenue minus expenses. Now we need to fetch the income tax, the retained earning, and the dividend entries. Now these are also T account categories, but we don't need a breakdown in here. We can just fetch the total against the categories that are already calculated in this area here. So we can just do next lookup of this ID in this array, and once it's found, return the total from this array. And let me convert the last two parameter as absolute, because we can, that way we can copy and paste the formulas. So this is done. Control C, Control V, Control V. Okay, so that's done. Now here is our, we need to update the net income, which would be income before taxes minus the income taxes. So that is income before taxes subtracting the income tax, and that is the 4962. And the retained earning here is your net income add to the retained earning from the previous period, and then add it to and subtract the dividend, any money that you took out during the year. And the net number is the resultant number, that is the money that you have net earned this year or this tax period. So this will get added to your equity, and I think this formula is already updated here. So you can see that whatever the ending retained earning we receive here, it gets added to your equity, because that's you're taking that equity over and it's converting to your capital, or your equity, shall I say. So doing that, it gets updated. Now let's just review our numbers. It should be, if everything was done correctly, the sheet should be balanced. Looking around, seems like it just still shows this balance sheet is not done. Okay, I think I see that. When we're doing sum, this should be the sum of all the equity, but we also have to add the retained earning that we just calculated here. So I think this was omitted. So we need to add sum, and one more cell needs to go in here. Once we close the bracket, now you can see that our statement seems to be balanced. Our total liabilities and shareholder equity is equal to your total asset. That's the golden equation. And that's what the flag that we have used in here. So the outcome of this sheet here is from the checking perspective, we have two flags that we calculate. One is the trial balance as a S1, and other one is if the balance sheet is correct. So your income statement is balanced. These two flags are now also used in all of our ledger and the journal accounts up in here. So that way, whenever we introduce any error and during entering any transaction, as soon as you mark any transaction complete, you make sure that your statements are balanced, so you can just glance it briefly. That comes as a very handy feature, because if you keep on entering a lot of data and then figure out there was an error, it can really be time consuming and hard to figure out which particular transaction caused the error. So that's the goal of using these flags in our ledger and in our journal accounts. So that brings us to the end of this particular video. The link to the file that we have developed is in the description below, so feel free to modify or change it for your own needs. And last but not the least, one humble request: if you have not subscribed to the channel, kindly do so, especially if the content is helpful to you. And also don't forget to like on this particular video, so we can spread the word out to the other community member who may find this information helpful. And in future videos, we will continue work on further developing this file and add some dashboard charts and data. But before that, we would also like to add some real world example for the first year and the subsequent and a carryover next year tax data from some practical business. That way, user can be more comfortable on how to use this particular file. So hopefully that would be helpful as well. So good luck in your financial journey, and we look forward to see you during the next video. Thank you very much.